Good evening. Indian Medical College welcomes you all to this online class. Dear viewers, in today's session, we have our enthusiastic speaker, Dr. Deepa Babin, Associate Professor from Department of Microbiology from SR Medical College and Research Center with us. She is having a plenty of teaching and practical experience behind her. She'll be taking class on scrub typhus today. Good evening, ma'am, and welcome. It is an immense pleasure to have you here with us, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
You can start the presentation now, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, good evening, all. So, we'll start our today's session with another topic that scrub typhus. You must be heard about scrub typhus. It is a bacterial condition. It is a re-emerging bacterial condition in our country, and we will see. And I told you, I put the pictures of the mite you must be seeing. So it is transmit. So it is a zoonotic condition also. Okay, so we'll see why we consider scrub typhus in some detail, or it is very important. Why? Because to be aware of this condition, that is the present scenario, because this outbreaks of many viral conditions like dengue fever, chikungunya, leptospirosis, and other viral fevers with secondary infections, this scrub typhus also, it's very difficult to differentiate the diagnosis. So that is why I put this topic today. And suspicion of a condition or the initiation of specific therapy can cure this condition rapidly, but otherwise it can lead to serious complication. So suspicion and go for the specific therapy, because that is actually the ideal way to save a life. But what is happening here is, along with the other viral conditions with the similar manifestations, we will misdiagnose the scrub typhus usually. So scrub typhus accounts for up to 50% of undifferentiated fever, or PUO, otherwise known as pyrexia of unknown origin, presenting to hospitals. Yeah, I think it is clear for you. That is, more than 50% of those fever condition, that is undifferentiated fever, that is we are not able to come to a conclusion of proper diagnosis. What is the reason behind this infection? That is known as undifferentiated fever, or otherwise we can say pyrexia of unknown origin or fever of unknown origin. It is presenting to our hospitals more than 50% of cases. One can be, that is among that, one condition can be scrub typhus. In India, it is the most common zoonotic rickettsial infection. So that is why I told you it's very important. In our country, it is a very common re-emerging zoonotic condition. And I told you it is a bacterial infection of coming under the family of Rickettsia, that is rickettsial group of bacteria. Among that, that is one group is Orienda, that is a scrub typhus group. And it remains a major underdiagnosed, that means suspected, cause of undifferentiated fever. So that's why we took this portion, and we should take into consideration of this differential fevers or pyrexia of unknown origin to be differentiated. In the list of pyrexia of unknown origin, there are certain bacterial causes, viral causes, or even parasitic, fungal, or neoplasm, or tumor causes, or even metabolic disorders. Also, so many are there. Among that, in the bacterial cause, you should consider scrub typhus also when you got a case of PUO or you can say pyrexia of unknown origin or fever of unknown origin. So we'll see scrub typhus. It is otherwise known as Chigger-Bond typhus or Chigger-Bond disease. And before going to the detail, I'll tell you that in your examination point of view, you can get a 5-mark question of scrub typhus or even a 10-mark essay question of clinical condition. So you should know the morphology, its pathogenicity, clinical features, laboratory diagnosis, treatment, and prophylaxis. That is the way you should write the answers in microbiology. So we'll see, we'll start. scrub typhus is otherwise known as chigoborne typhus. The causative agent is known as Orienda tsutsugamushi, is an obligate intracytosolic bacterium. And coming to the word meaning, what do you mean by Tsutsuga? That is, it's a Japanese origin, the word small or even dangerous. And mushi means creature, a small creature like that. So it is transmitted through the small creature or the bacteria. It's a small creature and the bacteria is also even small. So that's why that name Tsutsuga mushi. And it's common names in so many countries, so many names are there. Scrub typhus, rural typhus, hairy mite fever, Kilani fever, chigoborne typhus. So these are or Japanese fever, like that. It is usually the common name come across. It where you can see these scrub typhus. It is found in areas which chiggers are harbor. That is mainly in heavy scrub vegetations. So what do you mean chiggers? The larval form of mite. Mite is the mode of vector which is transmitting the infection, and the larval form of the mite, that is chigger, that is the vector, or chigger is the vector which is transmitting infection to man. Okay, so where these chiggers can be seen? They are seen in scrub vegetated areas. They are that is mainly they are endemic in the scrub vegetations. So these larval forms are seen in the scrub vegetations. Coming to the mode of transmission. So I told you the vector, that is a mite. There are 3 species of mite which can able to transmit this infection in man. It is mainly seen in our country. That is trombiculoid mites, Leptotrombidium deliens, and Leptotrombidium agamushi. So these are the, so it is, we can say it's a zoonotic and by a mite-borne infection. But mite, I told you, is the only larval stage of the mite can transmit the disease. The adult mice is nothing problematic to us, but the larval form, that is a chigger, that is why it is known as chigger-borne typhus or chigger-borne disease. So what may be scrub? That is, I told you, they are seen in the scrub vegetation. That is a type of vegetation like abundant plantations, endemic foci of foci areas or endemic areas of these scrub vegetations. Having this scrub vegetations are also known as mite islands, because that is the place where these mites are habiting. So what happened? They are known as mite islands. They will start laying eggs and the larval forms will be there. The chigger forms will be there. And when people like us or man encounter these regions of mite islands, we get the bite of this chigger and we'll get the chance of infection. So wild rodents act as natural host to scrub typhus. That is another important factor. And migration of the rodents lead to the establishment of disease, but rodents themselves don't show any clinical symptoms. So rodents also, they are the natural host of this bacteria. So when they migrate to from the rural area or to the livelihood areas, they can also transmit the infection. And what happens? But the rodents will not be having any clinical manifestation. So this is how the mode of transmission, that is by the chigger-borne disease, that is a larval form of mite, is transmitting the infection to man from the scrub vegetations. Coming to our Indian scenario. So epidemiology, that is how far or where we are standing now. So in India, the disease has occurred among troops during the Second World War in Assam and West Bengal, and in 1965 Indo-Pak War. So it is, and before going to the Indian scenario, I'll tell you, it is not a new disease. From Hippocrates onwards, there is evidence that scrub typhus is prevalent. So in India, first we are reported, that is first we came to know that during the World War, Second World War period, and there was a resurgence of the disease in 90s in a unit of army developed at the Pakistan border in India. So there starts. So there we got an idea that scrub typhus, that is a new type of infection, is there in our country also. Its occurrence reported from several states of India, including Jammu, Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Bihar, West Bengal, Meghalaya, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala. So almost all states now is very much prevalent for this scrub typhus. So we can't exclude any state or like that because it is spreading, rapidly spreading. And prevalent it is all over India, from Kashmir to Assam, in Vindhya Satpura ranges in central line, and even Deccan Plateau of South India. More than 8 serotypes until we recognize, because the scrub typhus serotypes are actually 8 serotypes are recognized: Gillian, Karp, Cato, Shimokoshi, Kawasaki, Rocky, Litchfield. That is mainly in Australia. So that also Australia is where it is originated. So it is present in our country also. There are more than 8 serotypes. So that is why vaccine is also a problematic, because maybe in one period of time, maybe one serotype is maybe the responsible of that epidemic condition. So when we produce one vaccine, but the other serotype will come out. So like that, vaccination or vaccine prophylaxis became a problematic due to this different serotypes of scrub typhus. Then why it is linked to war? So we may be thinking why it is linked to wars. That is even Napoleon retreat from Moscow. That is from the history. So saying that he was forced to retreat from Moscow because due to the rickettsial outbreak among his troop. So that was an evidence. And even Lenin, during his socialism, that is from Russia revolution, he told either socialism will defeat the Laos or the Laos will defeat the socialism. So now you have a clear idea that is scrub typhus. We are facing problematic in the last 10, 20 or last among 50 to 100 years, but far beyond it was there in the world. So it should be, that is, it is now re-emerging in the world scenario. So it has to be taken care. And there is a, in world scenario, there is a Tsutsugamushi triangle. That is why you can see in the graph, in the picture, there is a triangle shape in the graph. Because in this triangle, that is mainly northern Japan to far eastern Russian, northern area to the Australia, northern Australia, up to Pakistan or Afghanistan. So that these are the, that is Tsutsugamushi triangle it is known as, because they are in this area, among this area, this triangular region, the more prevalent cases and 1 million cases occurs annually. So 1 billion population are at risk, that means it is that much spreading, that means this much countries are affected, and then even annually more than 1 million cases are there. So that is actually known as Tsutsugamushi triangle in the world scenario. Now come to the microbiology, that is morphology, and coming to the pathogenesis. So I told you it is a bacterial group, and it is a bacteria of gram-negative bacteria of roll shape. Sometimes it can be seen Coccobacillus and it is intracellular also. This budding of Tsutsugamushi on our cell surface. So it will start multiplying in our cell surface. There are different serotypes are there. They does not have a vacuole membrane. So it grows freely in the cytoplasm of infected cells. So it is towards the cytoplasm of our cell. And the cell wall lacks lipopolysaccharide and peptidoglycan and does not have an outer slime layer. So the bacteria into cocci, bacilli, comma shaped or branching type like that. But here it is a gram-negative, we told, but they don't have any lipopolysaccharides and peptidoglycan. Cell wall is not that much strong because there is no need, because it is seen inside our cell. So it is again protected, and does not have a slime layer also. And it is not the usual morphology, that is usual bacteria having a separate morphology, definite morphology, but here it is intracellular. So I think you can see this arrow mark you can see here. That is our cell infected with like small fragments like this thing. And the gram staining is actually not a good method to see to get CL or chlamydial organisms. The best method is Giemsa stain. This is a Giemsa stain smear. So this is how the bacteria appears inside our cell. This is a cell nucleus, and you can see the bacteria inside like fragments of bit like particles. Coming to the clinical features. So actually the incubation period is mainly of 1 to 3 weeks. Average we can take us 10 to 12 days you can take. And patient started with fever, chills, regional lymphadenopathy, maculopapular rash, conjunctival ingestion. So these fever, chills, lymphadenopathy, rashes, headache, like that conditions usually comes with all viral fever conditions. Is it? The common viral fever conditions are very similar or resemble to these conditions also. So we will not think indifferent. So we consider it is some viral infection. So it will get into it one week after, no problem like that. We will wait, but misdiagnosis, the important factor you should examine if you have a patient like this of fever, chill, lymphadenopathy, macular rash or myalgia or conjunctival ingestion. Any eschar will be there in your body. Eschar means you must be heard the term that in anthrax we studied black eschar. Similar like that, a punched out ulcer covered with a blackened square which indicates the location of the mite bite. So that mite bite or the trigger bite site, that is the eschar, a punched out ulcer covered with a blackened scar. You can see in this diagram that eschar how it appears. And eschar is found only in around 50% of patients. That is another important difficulty. So usually eschar is one of the important finding in diagnosis of scrub typhus, but it can be seen because of the complex skin complexion. It can be not be noticed also, or maybe it will. Thing is, it is painless, and patient won't complain of it. So we will not that get noticed. If at all, if anything painful in our body only, we will be taking it as serious. But otherwise, we will let unnoticed. Often the patient don't notice it because of its presence of concealed sites. If it is in the concealed site of our body, the person will not be able to notice also. Then lymphadenopathy, that is regional lymphadenopathy, occurs at the end of first week, and generalized condition also appears 2 to 3 days later. So that is how the eschar and lymphadenopathy appears in a scrub typhus condition. So you can see a person having the mite bite of black eschar, it's seen in his body. So some more clear view of the eschar. So, and suppose we are not able to diagnose at this stage also that fever, chills and myalgia time, the patient can go to interstitial pneumonitis, encephalitis, anicteric hepatitis, or even myocarditis. That is liver, heart, brain, or even lungs can be infected with complications. Then that is actually the real problem. Fatality of this condition increases due to these complication because we are misdiagnosed in the during the first early stage of infection, and the patient will collapse very rapidly if we are not getting the proper treatment. Coming to the laboratory diagnosis, we say is the PCR, the molecular method, that is the PCR, because but it is not affordable to all. And the specimens usually will collect this from the scar that swab can be collected for the smears, and not only that, blood can be taken for investigation of serology and molecular diagnosis. The staining which we are used is Giemsa stain or Machiavello stain that I told you. The picture also is shown. That is, it shows a cytoplasmic inclusion. The bacteria will grow in the cytoplasm of our cell. And we can, that culture methods are also there. York sac and Bureau cell lines are used, similar like the virus. But it is actually not a virus, but it is a bacteria in between. It is not a bacteria, not a virus, like that in between. So that's why I think in the textbook you can see these chlamydia and rickettsia are put in the last chapters of bacteriology. So the serological investigation, in this one of the most important serological investigation, very old investigation we are using is Weil-Felix test. Another short note you can expect for a 2-mark or a 3-mark question. What is Weil-Felix test? Next is ELISA based test to detect the antibody, especially IgM and IgG also can be done. Molecular diagnosis by PCR, indirect immunoperoxidase assay, immunofluorescent assay, as a gold standard, but only for the research or epidemiological purpose, not for the patient, the rapid or diagnostic purpose. And IgM ELISA test, highly specific test, only in the first week. That is, IgM antibody appear only after 1 week. That is, after 1 week only we can get the IgM antibodies. Then at that time only, when we are doing the ELISA test, it will become more specific. Then coming to the Weil-Felix test, that it should be explained in detail. What is Weil-Felix test? It is a heterophile agglutination test. Works on the principle of antigenic cross-reactivity. Heterophile means different. So they can agglutinate different antigens. So they have the agglutination capacity. So what is the base of this test is this the sharing of an alkali stable carbohydrate antigen of rickettsia and certain strains of Proteus species. Proteus is another bacteria that is coming in the Enterobacteriaceae. You must heard. So that bacteria, certain strains of Proteus species antigen and similar. So we can take this Proteus strains as antigen to test whether the patient is having rickettsial infection, because we consider this both rickettsial carbohydrate antigen and Proteus, certain species of Proteus are having the same carbohydrate antigen. Okay, so it is a tube agglutination, and why it is tube means it is done into test tube. That's why it is tube agglutination, in which the serum of the patient to be tested for the agglutinins to the O antigens of non-motile Proteus vulgaris. That is the difference. Not all Proteus species will not share the same antigen. Non-motile Proteus vulgaris or OX19, OX2, and Proteus mirabilis OXK. So these are the 3 strains which is sharing similar antigenic structure or character with rickettsia. That is non-motile Proteus vulgaris OX19, OX2, and Proteus mirabilis OXK. So that we are testing with the patient serum. So this is how the test which we usually are doing, and you can see this line. You can see OXK, OX2, and OX19, and you can see 20, 40, 80 like that. This is the titer, that is the dilution which we are doing from for each strain, that is K2 and 19, and you can see that OXK shows positive reaction, and here OX2 and OX19 are negative. Here OXK agglutinins are found only in scrub typhus. That shows the patient is positive for scrub typhus. This is a positive and negative control which we have to compare. That will be very easy. You can see the positive. Here negative can show a small button like this thing, but in these lines you are not able to see any button like, but the rest 2 and 19 you can see a dot like structures in the titer plates. That means they are negative. Here it is agglutinated. So that agglutination you can see. So that is highly positive. The patient's positive, the titer 5120 up to it goes. So it is that the patient is highly positive. So OXK is the antigen which agglutinate or test positive for the scrub typhus. Okay. And false positive reaction can also occur in some patients, those who having any Proteus urinary tract infection, because I told you Proteus is a bacteria coming under Enterobacteriaceae, can cause even similar like our Klebsiella or Enterobacter. Like it can cause any E. coli like that. It can cause UTA, urinary tract infection. So suppose that patient is having UTA with Proteus. When we do the field Felix, suppose that getting the report that is if it is positive, that shows a false positive, because it is actually not the rickettsial disease the patient having, he is having the Proteus condition. So that is one disadvantage of that condition. So it is desirable to demonstrate a rising titer of antibody for the diagnosis of rickettsial infection. That means, suppose we do a single, that is first we do the test, we got a positive report. Okay, after 2 or 3 days or after 5 days, repeat the test. Maximum 3 to 5 days. Repeat the test. That is, then we can compare if there is rise in titer or it is responding below. We can confirm, yes, that is a rickettsial condition. So ideally, a 4-fold rise in agglutination titers in pair titers is diagnostic. That is, pair means 2 samples, one or more than 2 samples has to be investigated. So high cutoff. Cutoff is the positive predictive value is 1 is to more than 1 is to 320. But that depends upon the endemic population rate also. Because if 1 is to more than 1 is to 80, we can suspect this rickettsial conditions. Depends upon the endemicity. That is that varies in the region to region. Okay. So that is all about an idea. Now I think you got. So in front of you, a clinical case comes like this manifestation of fever, chills, myalgia, some rashes sometimes, and you should examine their body. Then or otherwise the patient is complaining about an eschar. Okay, so suppose if they're not have not getting an eschar in their body, still what you have to differentiate, that is acute undifferentiated febrile illness. That is, the fever is more than 5 days or more with or without an eschar. You should suspect rickettsia also in this. Along with other pyrexia of unknown origin, you should suspect rickettsia also along with other conditions. If eschar is present, it is easy. But I told you more than 50% patient will not be able to find out an eschar. And fever of less than 5 days duration should be considered as scrub typhus if eschar is present. So other features, headache and rash, lymphadenopathy, multi-organ involvement like liver, lungs, kidney, organ, heart, myocarditis can also happen. And a suspected clinical condition of titer, and you done, that is, then you suspected a rickettsia and you done a wheel Felix, you got a titer of 1:80 or above in OX2 and OX19 and OSK, and ELISA, that is IgM. By ELISA also you got it. OX2, OX19 and OXK I told you, because I told you there are different bacteria in the rickettsial family. That is for epidemic typhus, endemic typhus, scrub typhus are also there. So I just put this OX2 and 19, that is positive for the epidemic and endemic typhus. So that also should not be excluded, because that condition is also in our country. Okay, so when we are doing wheel Felix, together we are doing all these 3 antigens are together we are testing. So that's why I put like this. And IgM ELISA positivity also can be seen. So it should be, so wheel Felix and ELISA you done, you got a report of positive, but it should be confirmed with the PCR. Then only you can make confirmation of your diagnosis, that is the patient is having any rickettsial infection. And rising antibody titers on acute and convalescent sera, that can be detected by using immunofluorescence or indirect immunoperoxidase assay. So this is how what you have to take in your mind. That is, suppose a patient comes with a febrile illness of more than 1 week, all the investigation you done normally to, but you are able to find out the diagnosis. So you should consider, that is, then you will be thinking it's a piracy of unknown origin. So among this, there are certain standard procedures are there. So among this, one group of bacteria which you should suspect in this time is rickettsial infection, is scrub epidemic or endemic typhus also come. So what is the treatment we have to do? So without waiting for the laboratory confirmation of the infection, you should start with the radical tube. diseases, because I told you, laboratory confirmation is only for an evidence base. That is, you to confirm your diagnosis. That is, assume probable diagnosis you are confirming. But the therapy should start in advance, because otherwise the patient will not be able to save it. So the tetracycline, that is the drug of choice. So those who are allergic or having complications can give doxycycline of 100 mg. And prophylaxis, that is endemic. I told you that it is an endemic disease. So recommended prophylaxis usually in endemic areas, oral chloramphenicol or tetracycline, give once in every 5 days for 35 days, or weekly doses of doxycycline during 6 weeks after exposure have been shown to be effective. But the problem is resistance to these antibiotics are also reported. So we are not fully guaranteed how far it will work. Okay, so that is another problem, because these drugs, this antibiotic resistance is an important factor. So blind therapy like that we can do. If it is good or bad, later only we came to know that is that the patient will get the infection or not. Then how can we prevent or control? What are the other control measures, general measures we can do? One is the vector control, or having protective clothing, because when we are exposed to these mite islands, or those who are having adventurous trekking or adventurous events which are doing into the forest or the shrub areas, have to be take protective clothing. That insect repellents containing, that is dibutyl phthalate, benzyl benzoate, diethyl toluene, can be applied to the skin and clothing to prevent the chigger bite. And do not sit or lie on bare ground or grass. That is usually because its larval forms will be there in the ground level. And clearing of vegetation and chemical treatment of the soil can help to break up the cycle of transmission from chigger to man and to other chiggers. So that is another, that is one of the most common way which we can control this infection. So what is the take home message? So from this session, what you have to know? Scrub typhus is a re-emerging disease in India. It's an important cause of community-acquired undifferentiated febrile illness in India. It has to be considered in the differential diagnosis of sepsis, multi-organ dysfunction syndrome, or otherwise pyrexia of unknown origin. Failure of early diagnosis is associated with significant mortality and morbidity. So search for an eschar in the hidden areas of the body is also necessary. So thorough body examination is necessary, because this patient is complaining, that is, of this condition. Screening by Weil Felix and IgM ELISA, and to be confirmed with the PCR, and the drug of choice is doxycycline. So this is, I think, the topic about scrub typhus. Hope you all understood. Okay, you have any queries or any doubt, you can put it in the chat box. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the wonderful session.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Dear viewers, you can post your queries in the YouTube comment section and get it answered. Dear viewers, we have one more session upcoming next to this, where Dr. Shuganti presenting a lecture on topic calcium metabolism between 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. today. And we have some interesting sessions upcoming next to this by tomorrow. We have 2 sessions scheduled. In session 1, Dr. A.K. Jain handling a lecture on myopia exam topic. In session 2, Dr. Girija Shivakumar presenting a topic posterior triangle and suboccipital triangle from anatomy. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, dear viewers. Please stay safe.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.